Today we're going to be making this very simple crochet knit-like beanie. And this beanie is very simple to make. And for this beanie, I am working with the Cascade Yarns size 4 medium weight wool yarn, and the color I chose is Copper Heather. But of course you can use any size 4 medium weight yarn that you have lying around. I'm also going to be using a size H or 8 or 5mm crochet hook. And we're going to begin by attaching the yarn to our crochet hook using a slip knot. And we want to chain 51. And once you have your 51 chains, then we're going to turn our work. So turn your work, and we're going to skip this first chain and dive right into the back loop only, or the loop furthest away from you, of our second chain. And we're going to place a half double crochet slip stitch. So yarn over and insert your crochet hook in the back loop, and then yarn over and drop all the loops on your crochet hook for that half double crochet slip stitch. From here, we're just going to place one half double crochet slip stitch in the back loop only in each of the remaining stitches in our row for a total of 50 half double crochet slip stitches. And when you get to the end of your row, you're going to chain 1 and then turn your work. And from here, we want to skip our chain 1, and we're going to start placing one half double crochet slip stitch in the back loop only of each stitch in our row. But if you are new to crochet, I'm going to give you a little tip. So if you're new to crochet, go ahead and place these first 3 stitches. And then I want you to go back and mark that second stitch right here. And you can mark it with anything you have lying around, like a scrap piece of yarn, a safety pin, or if you have them, a stitch marker. So this should be the second stitch in your row. From here, you can continue to place one half double crochet slip stitch in the back loop only of each stitch in our row for a total of 50 half double crochet slip stitches. And when you get to the end of your row, you're going to chain 1 and turn your work. And from here, just like the previous row, we're going to skip our chain 1 and then start placing one half double crochet slip stitch in the back loop only of each stitch in our row. The only difference is we want to stop crocheting when we make it to our stitch marker here, which, as you'll recall, is the second stitch of the row. So if you didn't mark it, you just want to make sure you don't accidentally work in these last 2 stitches of your row. So go ahead and place one half double crochet slip stitch in the back loop only of these first 48 stitches. And so when you make it to the stitch beside the stitch that you marked, that's the end of your row. So from here, we're going to chain 1 and then turn our work. And just like before, we're going to skip our turning chain and then place one half double crochet slip stitch in these first 3 stitches. And then we want to move our stitch marker up so that it is marking the second of these 3 stitches. And once you've marked your second stitch, then you can continue on with your pattern, placing one half double crochet slip stitch in the back loop only of each stitch in our row. So from here, we want to repeat this process, working all the way down our row on this side where we don't have a tail, and then trimming 2 stitches off in each row coming back on the side with the tail. We want to do this a total of 5 times so that we drop 10 stitches in these 10 rows. So go ahead and repeat this process until you've whittled this down to 40 stitches in your latest row. And so once you have repeated that process 5 times, your beanie pattern should look something like this. So as you can see, I have already worked my way back up on the other side after my 5th decrease here. And so what we're going to do is follow our pattern all the way up to the top of our row rather than leaving off our last 2 stitches. And we're going to add 3 chains here. Then we're going to turn our work. And from here, we're going to skip this first chain as a turning chain and then place 1/2 double crochet slip stitch in the back loop only of our next 2 chains. And then 1/2 double crochet slip stitch in the back loop only of the remaining stitches in our row. So this will add 2 stitches to our latest row, so we should have a total of 42 half double crochet slip stitches. And when you get to the end of your row, your beanie should look something like this. So you can see we're starting to build this back up. So from here, we're going to chain 1 and turn our work. And we want to place 1/2 double crochet slip stitch in the back loop only of each stitch in our row. So that should be a total of 42 half double crochet slip stitches. And when you get to the end of your row, just like before, we want to chain 3. Then we're going to turn our work. And from here, we're going to skip our first chain as a turning chain, and then we're going to place 1/2 double crochet slip stitch in the back loop only of our other 2 chain stitches, and then in the remaining stitches in our row. So we should have a total of 44 half double crochet slip stitches in this row. And so that's going to be your repeatable pattern. We're going to work our way back up to 50 stitches in our latest row. Every time that we are on the side with a tail, we're going to add 3 chains and work in 2 of them. So each of these rows should increase by 2 stitches, just like we decreased by 2 stitches before. On the side without your tail, it should be flat, so you should not be increasing or decreasing at all over here. So just go ahead and work that pattern, placing 1/2 double crochet slip stitch in the back loop only of your remaining stitches, chaining 1 and turning your work, working all the way back up to the other side, and you're just going to chain 3 and work in 2 of those chains. And just like we decreased, we want to increase 5 times. So go ahead and work this back up to 50 stitches in your latest row. So I went ahead and repeated that process until I had my 5 increases. So as you can see, I've created another peak over here. So from here, with your crochet hook on the opposite side from your peaks and valleys, we're just going to repeat that process of decreasing back down. So we're going to leave off our last 2 stitches of our next row until we build back down to 40 stitches, just like we did here. Then we're just going to continue working back up. So this side is going to look kind of like a crown with 5 of these peaks here. So just a refresher, you're just going to leave off 2 stitches in your rows where you're decreasing down 5 times. And in your rows where you're increasing, you're just going to chain 3 and then work in 2 of those chains. And at your valley, you should have 40 stitches, and at your peak, you should have 50 stitches. So like I said, go ahead and repeat this until you have 5 of your peaks. And I went ahead and repeated this until I had my 5 peaks. And I went ahead and crocheted this down so that my crochet hook is on the opposite side of my peaks and valleys. And from here, we're just going to fold this in half so that we can crochet these edges together. And make sure you've placed a chain 1 at the end of your last row. And we're going to insert our crochet hook in our last half double crochet slip stitch, and then in this available loop from our original chain row. So you'll only have 1 loop on this side. And we're just going to yarn over and drop all of the loops on our crochet hook for a slip stitch. And from here, we're just going to repeat this process going up the side of our beanie, joining these two edges together. And when you get done joining your row, you should have this large tube. So now, working with our current peak and the one to the left of it, go ahead and fold those up together like this. And again, I want you to chain one at the end of your last row. And then what we're going to do is join our peaks together. And since we don't have any traditional stitches to work in, we're just going to have to work in the available loops along the edge here. And again, we're just going to be placing these slip stitches to join these two edges together. And I do recommend trying to keep these two edges lined up, so you sort of want to be working in corresponding loops on both edges. And once you've joined this first set of peaks, then we're going to cut and tie off our yarn. From here, attach the yarn to your crochet hook using a slip knot. Then I want you to work in the valley to the left of the last peak we just worked with, so right here. And again, we're just going to be joining these two edges together using slip stitches, just like we did for the previous one. Only this time we're starting in the valley instead of the peak. And when you make it to the top of your next peak, your beanie should look something like this. So now, working in the next peak to your left, you're just going to join this peak as well. And don't forget your chain one at the end of your last row. And at the bottom of this peak, you're going to cut and tie off your yarn again. Then we're going to attach our yarn to our crochet hook using a slip knot one more time. And we want to join our last peak and valley, and this will probably be folded together. And it doesn't really matter which end you start with, but I like consistency, so I'm going to start in the valley part. And when you get to the top of your beanie, then you're going to cut and tie off your yarn again. And I usually keep these tails near the top just in case I want to attach a pom-pom, and then I hide all of these tails that are sort of at the valleys. And we're going to hide them on this side and then turn our beanie inside out. And once you've turned your beanie inside out, you can fold the brim up like this to fit any head size. Otherwise, we are done with our beanie. Thank you so much for working with me, and I hope you have a wonderful, awesome day.